Asking blue pill, red pill, corporate press, I've had my fill. I'm just a simple chat, believing in my own will. Rat fire, math table, scheming, this is no drill. Haters masking boosted, but still with no chill. Need to come and take it if you wanna mess with my hill. We've been 3D printing, set and ready for that ghost kill.
Hello, Canada, and welcome to another episode of the Maple Pill. As always, I'm your host, Matt McKeever. We've got another full course or doses of the pills tonight, so I'll be running you through all of them. As well, we're going to be focusing on some updates around the Freedom Trucker Convoy, and spoiler alert, you know, mainstream media still pushing very hard on their war of propaganda against anyone associated with it. And yeah, but before we even jump into that, the first story that we're going to be chatting about before we get into our full doses of pills is actually going to be around Justin Trudeau getting called out by more members of the European Parliament, as well as other European politicians. It kind of warms my heart, despite the fact that I still see lots of snow right outside my window. I guess I'll just never get tired of hearing, you know, politicians. Sadly, we don't hear enough Canadian politicians, but at least European politicians calling out Justin Trudeau on his hypocrisy for lecturing them, lecturing Putin, for, you know, he just loves to lecture everyone else. And at this moment in time, honestly, when you listen to him talk, it sounds so obvious that he's projecting onto other people. Again, I easily could be projecting in this moment, but that's my personal take on it. So the first article I want to highlight here for you guys, and as always, links in the video description down below to all the articles and all the stories that we're going to be discussing. This is from the Counter Signal. CBC claims Trudeau got a standing ovation, doesn't mention empty parliament or denouncements. And again, I actually didn't see anyone really stand up, or certainly it didn't appear that the handful of individuals that all of them stood up. So that seems like a stretch, but let's read exactly what the CBC wrote. So speaking before half-empty benches and packed public galleries, Trudeau received... So again, speaking before half-empty benches and packed public galleries, I'd have to see the public gallery. I didn't actually get to take a close look at it. Trudeau received a sustained ovation when he said the European Union and NATO are more united than ever in the face of Russian President Vladimir Putin's war. He said the world cannot let Ukraine down. So I'm going to look. Oh, maybe the galleries were a little bit fuller than I realized. But anyways, that's not really the highlight of the story. If you guys want, in the Counter Signal, Kian does a great job of just laying out a bunch of the politicians that have already called out Justin Trudeau in Europe. We've actually spoken about a bunch of them, right? So we had, was it the Romanian MEP? Yesterday, we were talking about another different MEP that was calling them out. And again, if you guys want a slightly different perspective on this, I've got a similar article from canoe.com. But I just wanted to highlight a couple of these other politicians that recently called out Justin Trudeau, or they're starting to get a little bit more notice on the fact that they're calling out Justin Trudeau. So this one was from February 22nd. Irish Independent Senator Sharon Keegan called on her government to condemn PM Justin Trudeau's Freedom Convoy crackdown. Then jumping over more recently, so yesterday, Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau visited the EU Parliament to give a speech. I took the opportunity to give him an appropriate welcome there, short, concise, and right, hitting the bullseye. I believe that this is a British MEP, but let's just listen to her.
Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence.
Oh, sorry, the German MP.
I will now give the floor to Ms. Christine Anderson for her point.
Thank you. Based on Article 195, out that it would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a prime minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
And so again, I'm not going to claim that she got a standing ovation there, but there was definitely other members of the European Parliament that were clapping. You know, this certainly feels like this is, at least in part, some grandstanding, and a lot of the politicians calling out Trudeau are. But at the same time, I mean, this is exactly what Trudeau's doing by speaking to the members of European Parliament. He's also grandstanding. So at this point in time, we just got to expect that from all politicians. They're all looking to score political points whenever they speak out. But hey, I at least enjoyed when they're speaking out against Trudeau. Then we had another member of the EU Parliament calling out Justin Trudeau. And again, if you guys want to listen to him call him out, I encourage you to do so in the video description down below. There's the link. But one thing I did want to highlight is when they did the English dub of it, the translator or interpreter ignored the fact that he mentioned the 200 bank accounts being frozen. Now, this could easily just be, you know, an accident, a mistake, but, you know, I'm a little suspicious of that. So, again, love to hear your guys' thoughts, your opinions. Do you think this was just an honest mistake where the interpreter forgot a very important point that the member of European Parliament was making? Or do you think, no, this is probably just accidental? Let me know in that comment section. Next from Post Millennial, switching gears and talking about the Freedom Trucker Convoy. Ottawa Police Chief admits that no loaded firearms were found in trucks at the Freedom protest. So this is good and reassuring that peaceful protest was in fact a peaceful protest. But what is actually very frustrating, and I'll leave you guys to go listen to the actual footage of it, but I just want to highlight some points here, is how essentially it had to be dragged out of this interim police chief that no firearms were found and no loaded shotguns were found either. And the reason this is so frustrating is, like, this shouldn't be a political issue. This should actually be a very binary thing. Hey, you know, a reporter in the Toronto Star reported that police had found loaded shotguns that were being held by the truckers. Is that true or false? Right? That should actually be a very simple thing that our police officers should be able to answer to us. And yet, obviously, every aspect of our government and administration at this point in time is politicized. So obviously, they just can't come out and say that. So when asked a third time, and understand, again, Lloyd had to ask 3 times to get this answer, Bell would finally say, no, not related to any charges at this point. Reporter Justin Ling wrote in the Toronto Star that police sources indicated that loaded shotguns were found in trucks at the Ottawa protest. Is this false information? Bell responded that he is unfamiliar with the quote and that they had received intelligence and are continuing with an investigation. So again, like, he's just dancing around the answer here. We should be able to get real serious and clear answers from our police departments about what went down. Again, those that are speaking the truth don't fear transparency. They don't fear just being straightforward in their answers. It's those that are political grandstanding that are trying to score political points that want to dance around this so that they don't make the wrong quote and then get canceled by the Ottawa mayor or Justin Trudeau because they don't align with the politics that the narrative wants pushed. So again, I just find it very frustrating and just want to highlight here, Lloyd asked Bell to clarify on the record if loaded shotguns were found in the vehicles. And this is his answer. Consistent with my answers previously, yes, I can confirm to date no charges have been laid, which again is a non-answer, right? And like, why the fuck do we pay these people money when they just literally refuse to answer our questions? Let me know in the comment section if you guys think I'm being a little bit too hard here on the Ottawa police, but no, I really don't think it is. I think that you should be able to answer these questions. And if not, you should be able to tell us exactly why you can't answer them in a straight up and straightforward manner. Now from CTV News, Freedom Convoy organizer Litch and Barber facing new charges. I personally can't help but feel like this smells fishy. And the reason it kind of feels or smells fishy right now is we're hearing Justin Trudeau being called out by multiple European members of parliament. We've already seen in the past other members of political parties and parliaments in Europe calling out Justin Trudeau. But now all of a sudden, there's new charges laid. So Tamara Lich and Chris Barber are now jointly charged with mischief, counseling mischief, intimidation, counseling intimidation, counseling obstruction of police, and obstructing police. Again, this is clown world. These are clown charges. This is just so that they can get a couple more headlines so they can keep pushing the war of disinformation against the Freedom Trucker convoys at this point in time. This isn't about protecting anyone. This isn't about saving Canada. This is literally about trying to save political careers. And we should all make it very known that this is not okay. That we need real truth and real facts laid out here, right? We've discussed earlier in the week how the arson case that was originally purported as one of the main pillars of why this Freedom Trucker convoy wasn't completely peaceful, when in fact it essentially was completely peaceful. And now we're seeing this push, right? Like they'd already previously been charged with mischief and counseling mischief. So the new charges here are intimidation, counseling obstruction of police, and obstructing police, which when it really comes down to protests, compared to our American brethren and their summer of love that we saw play out just a couple of years ago, seems very mild. And even when we look at things that have gone down since the Freedom Trucker convoy broke out, right? Like we saw that attack on a gas pipeline that played out while we were watching essentially the enforcement of tyranny here in Canada. Again, we covered that back, I'm trying to think of when it would have been, but probably the start of March, maybe the end of February. So if you guys want to understand more about what's playing out right now, I encourage you to check it out. There's a link to this CTV News article down below. Next from Global News, Ottawa convoy deemed national security threat a week before Emergencies Act police. And so again, this is really a nothing burger, but it's good enough to get a headline and keep pushing the blue pill mainstream media narrative that the truckers were dangerous and that we should all punish them to the fullest extent of the law. Again, I'm suspicious because it actually had been pretty quiet the last little bit on the Freedom Trucker convoy, but now that Trudeau's getting called out more, it seems like they're ramping up again into full gear. Now from CBC News, which honestly, CBC News is such propaganda. I can't wait until someday I hope we get to defund the CBC, but this is the article they're running with. This was on their front page today. I regret going. Protester says he spent life savings to support Freedom Convoy. And so, again, this is about an individual who was supporting the Freedom Trucker Convoy, despite the fact he said he didn't have a political motive or opinion when it comes to vaccine mandates. What he was really frustrated by was the fact he couldn't see a dying, I forget whether it was a dying friend or a dying loved one, during a lockdown. And so he decided to help support them. He was delivering goods and services. He was paying money out of pocket, and he was expecting to be reimbursed from the not a Give Send Go. What's the other one? The GoFundMe platform, right? And so now he's kind of wishing it didn't happen. He spent $13,000. He was kicked out of his apartment. It says because of his political views, which again, I don't think that that's actually how it works. And it's shocking that CBC wouldn't go running at this and focus on like, hey, that's an abuse. You can't actually kick someone out of their apartment because of their political views or their participation in this. So again, it just seems strange, but the strangest thing to me is the fact that the CBC is focusing on pushing one side of this narrative so strongly, right? We still haven't seen them really come out and apologize for all the misinformation they've spread previously. We saw them retract some articles, right, around the idea of Russian support and primarily being foreign funded, which all were lies. I don't think that they were one of the news outlets. I'd have to double check this now, but I don't believe they were one of the news outlets that came out with a retraction about the arson story yet. And now we've got this, which is like, this is one anecdotal story. What do you want to bet that there's thousands of Canadians that are very proud of the fact that they stood up for their freedoms, that they stood up for what they believed in, and they'll hold their head high till the end of their days now because of the fact they stood behind what they believed was morally and ethically correct, regardless of the fact of how their political opponents, how the prime minister, how his party, how the mainstream media chooses to frame the narrative. So again, it's just fascinating to me because they are going full tilt, still pushing against this. And, If you wanted reconciliation, if you wanted to heal old wounds, this is not how you do it. This is not the way, man. And we need to continuously fight for our freedom here in Canada, because the fact that they're still pushing these narratives tells you everything you need to know about their perspective on what went down. They live in such an echo chamber that no new information, regardless of the fact whether the Toronto Star misreported on that information about loaded shotguns, which we literally just discussed. Again, they don't give a shit about the truth. They only give a shit about power and using that power to enact their policies. This is very dangerous. And again, here in Canada, we need to continuously be speaking out about this and just creating that common knowledge as game theory would dictate. I know I go on this rant a bit, but we all need to make our personal views known here and now, because the silent majority shit isn't going to play out well, right? We need to actually make it known that this is not okay. We actually believe that we should have freedoms here, that, we're actually individuals in Canada, not just an asset on the government's balance sheet. Now getting into our first blue pill story of the day, I just kind of found this funny. California proposes giving up to $1,800 per driver to offset gas prices. So Governor Newsom has proposed direct payment, free public transportation, and lower taxes to offset soaring gas prices. Now, this is very similar to the Band-Aid solution that we saw play out in Quebec, where they announced people that made less than $100,000 would be eligible for $500 to help fight inflation. But understand, this idea of like giving $800 per registered vehicle in California, again, Band-Aid solution, but also doesn't actually address all the issues, right? The price you pay at the pumps, the inflation you're seeing in gasoline there, is only one part of the inflation playing out right now. They use gas and fuel to ship everything, right? So we're going to see this inflation spread to every aspect of the economy. And these ideas of being able to buy votes are maybe short-term, solutions, but they're truly band-aids. They're not even triage, right? Like, we're not even trying to really solve any of the issues, and we're going to be worse for it down the road. Next, from the Toronto Sun, Ontario MPP denies NDP claim he joined anti-Islam group. So Ontario MPP Paul Miller flatly denies joining an anti-Islam Facebook group, which was the main reason the NDP gave for giving him the boot just months before a general election. Essentially, to surmise what went down here, he says that his staffers were completely in charge of his social media, so he didn't even join this group, didn't know about it, and that this was really just used as a scapegoat in order to push him out of the NDP party. NDP leader Andrea Horwath claims Miller was removed from caucus and told he could not run for the party in the next election due to a history of problematic behavior, culminating in his membership in the Facebook group called Worldwide Coalition Against Islam. And then just wanted to hit upon here one point. So this cancel culture is very serious in the States and here, Miller said. We're all here to represent the people of Ontario. We all have our views. We discuss it, we debate it, but we don't get personal and we don't attack people because they won't do what they're told. This cancel culture is only going to get worse as the years go by. Part of me, wants to just kind of laugh and be like, let the left eat the left. I don't really give a shit. But there are, spin-off consequences here, or tangential consequences, or, second degree factors here that play out that we all still need to be aware of. So first things first, those of us that are freedom oriented, we need to completely get rid of this idea of cancel culture. And it doesn't matter whether it's coming from the left or the right or somewhere in between. People should have the freedom of speech. And we're going to get to that in a little bit in a black pill story, but I don't give a shit what the government tells you. You should have the freedom of speech. I don't give a shit what the government tells you. Hate speech isn't a thing, and the only thing it is a giant slippery slope to tyranny. Because at that point in time, they're not just really trying to police your speech, they're also trying to police your thoughts and treat you like a thought criminal. Next, opinion, Jagmeet Singh puts on a rare display of integrity in politics, the Globe and Mail. And this is just hilarious. They're claiming that Jagmeet is such a trooper, such a Canadian hero, that he doesn't care about the fact whether he gets judged in Parliament, that he's willing to do whatever it takes for his ethics and his moral beliefs and his policy beliefs. If you believe that, I bet you believe that the Freedom Truckers convoy was just filled with, anti-Semitic, racist, misogynist, rapists that were just frothing at the mouth because they received all that funding from the United States and Russia, and that was one giant Russian disinformation campaign that led Canadians to dislike their government. Just this is such bullshit. I don't even know what else to say there, but I did want to highlight it because it's important to understand how the narrative is being crafted towards the average, mainstream media, legacy press, consumer of information. So let's switch gears here, get into the first red pill story of the day. Canada fairly close to a debt crisis, warns Magna founder Frank Stronach. So calls for legislation that would prevent governments from spending more than they collect in taxes. So Frank Stronach, founder of one of Canada's largest global companies, says the country is fairly close to a public debt crisis and Canadians need to force politicians to rein in spending. When asked how close Canada was to debt crisis similar to the one that threatened the country in the 1990s, Stronach said, "I think fairly close. Our debt rises about $400 million every day, right? So that should be a great concern. We covered this yesterday, but yes, $400 million a day is a lot of fucking money, and we should all really be concerned about how the government chooses to spend our tax dollars. And it doesn't matter how much of the pie they promise to give you, understand that pie is still coming from you, right? And the government administration, they're just a bunch of middlemen that slowly slice and dice pieces off for themselves, and you get what's ever left over, right? Now, this idea of calling for legislation that would prevent the government from spending more money than they collect in taxes, that in theory sounds like a good idea. But I do think that there's unintended consequences from this, particularly if we've got a liberal quasi-majority backed by the NDPs, because if they're going to be in power for the next 3 or 4 years, there's nothing, in my opinion, that's going to stop them from spending. So if you were to enact a policy like this, they were just going to jack up taxes on the average Canadian. I really think we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't in this situation. We're probably all best off just to pull up a chair to the dumpster fire that is Canada, warm our hands around it, and start focusing on building our parallel institutions. Now from Spencer Fernando, 5 reasons why the Liberal NDP coalition will be devastating for Canada's economy. So economic illiteracy now runs rampant in the federal government. And yeah, when I think about 2 people that are financially illiterate, those 2 guys actually, they rank pretty high on my list. I'll let you guys kind of read through this article on your own time. A lot of it really focuses around their economic policies and the consequences around that. So again, we're going to get into more debt in Canada. We're going to print more money. We're going to end up seeing them justify all those actions by raising taxes. We're going to see them destroying confidence amongst Canadians because they're going to tell us one thing and we're actually going to get separate results. And the last point here he makes is that we're depriving our allies. Again, at this point in time, I think we need to be very careful about this idea. What he's kind of focusing on is that we should be supporting Europe with our oil and gas in order to kind of fight the sanctions or the economic conflict that's going on in Eastern Europe right now. I get it, but again, what we actually really need to focus on is just fixing Canada first. Let's actually just get our ducks in a line rather than constantly trying to get involved in foreign affairs and foreign policy. Now from Canoe.com, doctor criticizes Trudeau's unhelpful comments on unvaccinated. So the president of a medical association says Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's dismissal on the unvaccinated as a fringe group isn't productive, according to Blacklock's reporter. It was the uniquely unhelpful thing the Prime Minister did when he said that, testified Dr. David Jacobs, president of Ontario Association of Radiologists. It was politically driven. It did not help anyone in the healthcare industry. It did not convince anyone to change their mind. Yeah, I agree. It's just completely polarizing rhetoric, right? But that's honestly most of what comes out of Justin Trudeau's mouth these days when it's not just straight up lies. But again, if you guys want to go further down that rabbit hole, link in the video description down below as well. I've got a link to the original Blacklock's reporter article. But let's talk from Richard Diaz here, who's a CFA, who did a chart update. And so this is Canada's mortgage debt. It grew by 10% year over year from January 21 to January 22. And that's $188 billion essentially and more mortgage debt. Yeah, I bet that story ends well, guys. I bet that this is probably nothing and we can just ignore it. I imagine we can just get into all the debt we want, both as a federal entity, as provincial entities, as municipal entities, as well as individual actors. And I don't see why there should be any consequences. I'm pretty sure budgets balance themselves these days, so it's kind of silly to get worked up about that stuff. Now getting into a black pill story of the day. 35% on welfare 10 years on. And so this is from Blacklock's reporter. It's really worth reading the entire article, but I just want to highlight a couple key points here. More than a third of government-assisted refugees remain on welfare a decade after landing in Canada. Analysts with Statistics Canada said yesterday, higher welfare rates followed landmark 2001 changes to immigration laws. And just a reminder, because probably none of us remember those immigration laws from 2001, the StatsCan report said changes in immigration law were directly responsible for the rates. In 1976, Immigration Act had required foreigners to show proof of work skills and economic independence. Parliament in 2001 enacted Bill C-11, the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, that waived requirements for refugees to prove they were unlikely to rely on social assistance. Again, government policies that sound good on the surface, but have unintended consequences, and actually serious consequences to, honestly, not only does this have consequences to your average Canadian citizen, not only does this have consequences to our social safety net, but I can't help but feel like with 35% of refugees that are government sponsored ending up on or staying on social welfare 10 years later, this is their new normal, right? Like there's no pivoting here. There's no, adapting to our world or our economy. This is literally just us creating a new cast of people that depend solely on the government for their survival. That's not good. It's not good for them. It's not good for Canada. It's not good for us, the average taxpayer, either. And speaking of what's not good for the average taxpayer, from the Toronto Star, inside the $11 million renovation to Justin Trudeau's official country home. Now, again, I might just be one of these crazy wackos, but having a residence for the Prime Minister in Ottawa, close to the Parliament, I can almost rationalize that cost to the taxpayers. Having 6 official residences? Nope, hard no. We don't need more than one, and it doesn't need to be anything fancy. In fact, I would argue that the representative of the government, the Prime Minister, should live like the median Canadian. Why should he live fancier than the average Canadian? Straight up. Is there a logical reason for this? Oh, it's how we get viewed on the international stage. And if they saw the Prime Minister living in like a basic bungalow with a 3+1, what would international allies of ours think? They might think like, hey, this country's frugal as fuck. They actually know what's going on when it comes to spending. But of course, that's a dream reality that I've constructed. Taxpayers have just spent at least $11.7 million since 2019 to renovate the country retreat for prime ministers at Harrington Lake and the Quebec Hills, a short drive from Ottawa. It's like an old Muskoka cottage for Torontonians, but much closer. I don't know what you think of old Muskoka cottages as, but I don't think of old Muskoka cottages as costing $11.7 million in renovations. At least 10 years ago, they certainly didn't. I know now where real estate goes up like 30% a year. Maybe we're getting close to that in the Muskoka. I know I always pluralize it. I don't know why. It just get used to it. A new kitchen. So part of the renovations was a new kitchen valued at $735,000. $735,000 for a new kitchen. Included in that was like a consultant on design for like $52,000. No. Stop it. Bad Prime Minister. Bad government. Bad spending. The overall cottage repair was once budgeted at $3.5 million. Again, why do we trust these people with any amount of money, let alone millions, billions, and now we've got over $1 trillion of debt here in Canada? For a building of 8,300 square feet, this rose to $4.4 million, $5.5 million, $5.8 million, and was finally approved in 2019 as $6.118 million. But reminder, we actually still essentially doubled from that, right? Why? One document has a phrase that probably wasn't meant to be funny. The latest increase, someone wrote, has had an increase. The latest increase has had an increase. Yeah. Not only is that just great language. That's literally a sign of the times. Our latest inflation had inflation. Look forward to that headline in the mainstream media in, I don't know, a couple months. Actually, maybe at this pace, a couple weeks. All this comes at a time when the NCC says it would cost $89.1 million to catch up on all the overdue repairs and maintenance for its 6 official residences. Hey, I'll solve this problem right now. Sell the 6 official residences. Let's sell them. Put that money into government bonds if we want. Oh wait, they pay essentially next to nothing. Let's put them into corporate debt and use that to rent a nice 2-bed, 1-bath for the prime minister. How's that sound? It says bringing all 6 up to modern standards. For instance, in accessibility would cost $175 million. So again, if you were to try and make them all like accessible up to today's standards, $175 million. Why? Like, this literally makes no sense. Let's at least give it to refugees that just never have to work. That actually sounds like a better use of this money than literally this. Although I prefer none of the above if those are the options being presented. Next, from National Post, despite what you may think, Canadians don't actually have freedom of speech. Now, this is true in a way, and this is completely wrong and false in another way. So yes, we don't have the First Amendment. The government hasn't granted us free speech. But I don't know about you. I actually believe that I am free to say whatever I want. Now, that doesn't mean that I want to instigate trouble just for the sake of trouble. But this idea that like, oh, well, the government never gave us freedom of speech, so you're technically wrong saying that we've got freedom of speech in Canada. Like, yeah, you're technically right, but you're not morally or ethically right on that subject matter, because the government shouldn't actually dictate those freedoms. The government should actually serve the people and just be responsible for property rights, as you know, like Frederick Bestit wrote in his essays, as well as I'm trying to think of what the one pamphlet was, but essentially something on the law. So again, no, you can't just like, the government doesn't get to just write away all our rights, right? They can't just decide tomorrow that we have to wear a paper bag on our head, and then we see an article in the newspaper that says, technically, you don't have the right to not wear a paper bag on your head. That's just, no, I'm not okay with this. And I think that what we should be framing this as, instead of like a got you, the fact that a lot of Freedom Trucker Convoys protesters thought we did have freedom of speech, what this should actually be framed as is we deserve freedom of speech in this country. We deserve to not have our freedoms infringed upon the government whenever they see it, expedient towards their political ends or means. Now from the Ron Paul Institute, we're not going to go deep into this article because I'm pretty sure if I read it, I'd probably get immediately banned on social media. But record infections and super vaxxed UK seniors as double vax show negative efficacy against COVID death. Again, worth the read. Link in the video description down below. But I don't feel like getting my channel banned today. Next, from Louder with Crowder, this gets us into our first clown pill of the day. And actually, this was kind of surprising for me. It took a little bit for me to find a clown pill. So I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are. And if you guys ever have any good clown pills for me, again, you can always jump into the Problems or Profits Discord. There's a link in the video description down below. And we've got an entire thread or channel there called The Maple Pill. Really appreciate when you guys share story ideas with me. But Ice-T wins the internet with dad joke about gas prices, though some humorless Twitter scolds aren't laughing. So again, this literally feels like a benign joke, and yet in this day and era, nothing is benign and nothing is below the threshold of cancel culture. So Ice-T, I was robbed at the gas station in New Jersey last night. After my hand stopped trembling, I managed to call the cops, and they were quick to respond and calm me down. My money is gone. The police asked me if I knew who did it. I said yes. It was pump number 9. Now, obviously, this is a joke about the inflation, and specifically the inflation we're seeing in gas prices right now. But a bunch of, Twitter thought police, I don't know what else to say, jumped in there and said, like, with everything going on in Ukraine, you dare make a joke about the prices of gas? It's just like, I don't even want to believe that you're humans. At this point in time, I literally want to believe in the dead internet theory. If you guys haven't came across it. Essentially, the thesis here is that the internet actually died like 10 years ago, and 99% of the engagement and content and comments, I should say, not content, but comments, although comments are a big part of the content, are actually just like robots and people trolling and troll farms, in China or Russia or wherever else. And I'm sure that the CIA has their own version of troll farms too. I imagine they didn't want to be left behind. Because like, if this isn't the case, like, I don't know, we just need another option. We literally need another option. And so let's get into some white pills though. And again, I always want to hear from you guys and what white pills you think. But the white pills I kind of focused on today, I was struggling a little bit. So I thought, why don't I just be thankful for other content creators? And so I want to play this clip here of Brett Weinstein. If you guys haven't checked out his podcast, Dark Horse Podcast, really encourage you to do so. He's creating some amazing content. And again, one of these content creators that's willing to pay the price for truth, for transparency, for authenticity. And they're discussing essentially how you're not allowed anymore to make comparisons to Nazi Germany.
The reluctance to compare what's going on now to what happened in Nazi Germany is not just a concern about trampling insensitively on the horrors of what happened to the Jewish people and other people in 1930s and 40s Germany. It's not just a moral transgression. As soon as we make an analogy between what's happening now and any moment in the past, we're forcing a connection that we've really lost already, and we don't know how to do it.
Yeah, I take this one very personally. I was born in 1969, which at the time seemed a long way from Nazi Germany, and I now realize it wasn't very long at all. And, as a Jewish kid, my elders made very sure that my generation understood that it could happen here. It can happen anywhere.
And you probably thought they were crazy.
No, I listened. What I didn't get, what I never once thought, was that it could happen everywhere. I always thought it can happen somewhere, and the thing is, you don't want to be late to escape it. I didn't think it was going to happen everywhere. But I know that over all those years, we've developed a sensitivity to analogizing, that the Holocaust has become too sacred in a sense, that we're not allowed to invoke it because people have been too careless in doing so. But my feeling is a lot of people are now comforted by the fact that what they see doesn't look like Nazi Germany. It doesn't goose step. It doesn't wear skulls on its hats, right? There's something comforting about the fact that it doesn't look Nazi. But I don't think we should be comforted at all, because let's put it this way.
I don't know. The devil, what is the saying? The devil you don't see is a lot worse than the one that you do, something like that. I mean, the idea that it's almost sort of hiding in plain sight or something.
Right. Hiding in plain sight, hiding in the form of Tony Fauci, who just really doesn't look like a Nazi.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of great points. This is worth watching the entire YouTube video, so I encourage you guys to go check it out. But a couple points I want to hit upon there. The first one is, again, far too often people want to see a carbon copy before you can make any sort of comparison. But there's that classic saying that history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. And I really think that that's the gist of what they were trying to say there. But one other thing that Brett brought up that I think is worth really understanding is he's talking about you don't want to be too late to escape, and that he never thought it would be everywhere, because essentially that allows you an out, right? An opportunity to escape. And not sure if you guys have ever came across nomad capitalists, but for those of you that are maybe thinking of, skipping Canada, again, at this point in time, I'd like to throw shade at the people that want to run away from Canada, but I got my own internal dialogue and debates around this subject matter as we speak, so I'm not going to be casting any stones. But one of the catchphrases that the nomad capitalist regularly makes is better years too early than a day too late. And honestly, that's kind of what I feel about with like the Citadel, literally where I live, right? The compound I bought in Northwestern Ontario. To me, I'd much rather be too early. I'd much rather slightly overreact to a potential edge case scenario that has almost no downside, my overreaction, but has significant consequences if I underreact to the situation. And so again, that's not to say that all of us needs to literally move out to the middle of nowhere and, you know, buy or build a compound and live off the land and build your own society. Although I think it'd be super cool if you did. I think it is important that everyone be trying to insulate themselves from the coming volatility because that's happening. I don't know how else to frame it. We're going to find society, the social bonds, all like our infrastructure, inflation, all this shit's going to be very volatile. Now, again, that's not to say it's even going to be necessarily into the world as we know it volatility, but goddamn, it's going to be volatile. It's going to be all over the place, in my opinion, the coming years. And it's a lot easier to roll with the punches if you've got a little bit of insulation. So again, really encourage you guys, start insulating yourself from the coming volatility. Next, I just wanted to highlight my buddy. I mentioned Mark Parvalos in the past in regards to his content, Canada Poly. So again, link to his Rumble channel in the video description down below. He's definitely worth giving a sub. And again, I just appreciate that there's other Canadians out there commenting on the news, exposing the mainstream media, corporate press, legacy media for all their lies and misinformation, and is trying to hold Canadian politicians accountable, because all of us need to do more of that. And finally, I did want to throw in like a true white pill. So I'm actually really excited by what I see going on in the world of Web3 and NFTs. Now, that's not to say that like I'm an ETH maxi or anything like that. I would associate myself actually as a Bitcoin maxi. But I think what we see playing out in these communities, the idea of essentially the evolution of fractional ownership and like property rights and intellectual property rights and all that is fascinating. And I can't predict what happens next, or I can't accurately predict exactly what happens next. But I think the general theme is a lot of cool things, a lot of cool communities, a lot of cool movements are going to come out of what I currently see blossoming in this space. And so actually earlier today, I had a business meeting with some of my business partners and employees, essentially discussing why I'm so excited for the future of NFTs and Web3 and the opportunities I see on the horizon. This is a video I've released just kind of as a bonus to anyone that watches on BitChute or Rumble. So again, link in the video description down below to the BitChute channel. Really encourage you guys, if you go watch it, leave me a comment, let me know your opinion, smash the like button on that video, but also subscribe to me on BitChute, because someday I will disappear off of YouTube and Facebook. And again, probably not of my own volition or choice, but when that happens, make sure that you can stay in contact with me. Join the Problems or Profits Discord. Follow me on BitChute, follow me on Rumble, and really encourage you, if you're even mildly interested in, like, I don't understand why the hell Matt got out of real estate and he's fucking around with this cryptocurrency stuff, this might be a decent little introduction into my thought process. Again, for those of you that are already like deep into Web3, I'd love your hot takes and your opinions on my hot takes and opinions. And finally, moving on from the white pill, the meme of the day. I thought this was a good one. Does he look like a bitch? I'm not a biologist. So if you guys haven't watched Pulp Fiction in a while, this is maybe just a good reminder to go watch that, because definitely a interesting and dynamic movie. I definitely enjoyed watching it. Although the scene in is it the gun shop or the pawn shop, that still actually haunts me. But anyways, that's today's Maple Pill. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I appreciate those of you jump in the comment section. I'm going to jump in there and start chatting with you guys shortly. If you've got any hot takes on what we've discussed, jump in that comment section. If you enjoyed the video, smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're new to the channel. Again, while I know I'm going to disappear off of YouTube someday, I would love to get to at least 1,000 subs before that day comes. We're currently, I believe, at 980 subs. So really, all it would take is 20 of you right now to go subscribe, and I'd be able to hit that little goal, and it would just be a nice mental win. If you guys want to see my hot takes and me just sharing a lot of shit posting memes, make sure you're following me on Instagram. It's Matt McKeever Unfiltered. And let's jump into the chat. All right, I'm going to scroll to the top here, see what's up. We've got Farzana in the chat. We've got Graham. Hey, what's up, guys? We've got Gary McDonald. Hey, Gary, it's been a while. Hope you're doing well. Benjamin, seems like Europe is well aware of Justin's actions. Yeah. At least it seems like a segment of them are, right? I don't doubt that there's probably, I wouldn't be shocked if the majority of them would kneel at the altar of Justin Trudeau, but it is refreshing to at least hear a handful of them really calling out Justin Trudeau. Because I haven't heard a single Canadian politician talk about him the way members of European Parliament are. And so that is refreshing, and I hope it emboldens Canadian politicians to speak the truth, to speak out, to fight for transparency. Sean Sound says, not just the Ottawa police, but the whole Liberal Party seems to be trained to answer questions with verbal diarrhea over and over again. Yeah, and this is even bigger than the Liberal Party. This is a lot of politicians. So the same way that I would love to just pick on the Liberals, we can also look at, like, think back to Aaron O'Toole and the tap dancing he did around in regards to whether he supported or didn't support the Freedom Trucker Convoy. Hell, you can look at Candice Bergen now and the tap dancing she's doing, right? Again, I'm sure it's a difficult position to be a politician, but I don't care. You chose that, right? You weren't forced into becoming a politician. And if you want us to give you the benefit of the doubt, you need to be fighting for us daily. You can't just do one good thing as a politician or not always be bad as a politician and expect a pat on the back. Again, we're seeing this play out right now to an extreme manner, in my opinion, with the U.S. nomination going on right now for the new Supreme Court justice, right? Where she was asked to define what a woman is, and that's kind of the joke I was making with this meme, right? Where she wouldn't define the word woman. But understand that that actually is important, right? Like, whether you're talking about abortion rights, whether you're talking about what's going on right now with sports and things of that nature, it just, the fact that we live in such a facade of reality, and that we're willing to accept that reality is so malleable that, like, words can't have definitions or meanings, it's just, I don't know. Again, we live in the clown timeline. It's the age of hilarious. Farzana, they should absolutely be accountable to answer questions if they are able to say what they want and make allegations without any consequences, which they have been doing, accusing the Freedom Convoy with arson. Why shouldn't more people be pushing them to get answers that are actually true? Yep, you're going to find no arguments or quarrel with me on that one. Bill Bone, sup, Matt? Finally getting to catch one of these live. Good shit. Appreciate it, Bill, and hope you're subscribed. Tara says, they make a big fuss about Miller joining an anti-Muslim Facebook group, yet they would have applauded him if he had joined an anti-Christian group instead. After all, only in Canada do we put pastors in jail for having church. Yeah, what's going on with Pastor Arthur is still completely unacceptable. I believe he's still being held without parole. Last time I checked in, it's been a couple days, but I'm pretty sure that that's where we were at. Now, do I think that the NDP would have literally applauded him for if he had joined an anti-Christian Facebook group? I don't know, but he wouldn't get in trouble, certainly the way he's getting in trouble right now. And again, it's just disingenuous, right? Because if you dig, below the surface on certain NDP politicians or supporters or Green Party supporters, you'll often find that, while they may not be anti-Islam, there is some anti-Semitism in those ranks, right? There are some very anti-Jewish state individuals, right? Anti-Israel. It's easy to spend someone else's money. That is far too true. If you don't understand the cost it takes to earn that money, you're never going to respect it, right? It's the whole idea why, like, children will ask for anything and everything, because they don't understand that, like, oh shit, like, the reason dad or mom actually go to work for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, the reason they don't just, like, stay home and homeschool me is because they're trying to earn money. And that money is at least for the average citizen, not for governments, a finite resource where, again, I just don't have an infinite supply of it that I can just tap into whenever I want, regardless of how rich you are. Leah D, that's her. I forget what that's in relation to, but appreciate you jumping in the comments. Free Faster went to Home Depot today, and 80% of people are still wearing masks. Why? Honestly, I'm seeing more and more of this on Twitter. Again, I'm kind of a hermit at this point in time, so I'm planning on making a trip to the big city of Kenora next week. And I never wore a mask, regardless of when I went to Kenora. I won't be this time either. But I do look forward to seeing if this is the case in Kenora. Fingers crossed that my brethren up here are a little bit more reasonable and a little bit more freedom-oriented and aren't so cuckolded by the mainstream narrative that they're all following suit. But I'd love to hear, what are you guys personally experiencing? And if you don't mind, let us know, what city or region or at least province you're in when you're giving us your perspective, because it actually does shock me. At the same time, I truly believe everyone should have the right to wear masks, but I just can't help but think most of these people are actually being bullied into it still, whether it's directly or indirectly. Like, their fear of confrontation, of being judged, of being viewed as the other is so extreme that they'll just never let that go. Um, yeah, I don't know. At the same time, part of me thinks it's actually a good thing, because it literally lets me quickly see who the sheep are and who the shepherds are. And honestly, those of us that are shepherds, we've got a much bigger responsibility and role in society than maybe we want, than maybe we expect. But if we want a better world tomorrow, we're actually going to have to be the ones to roll up our sleeves and start fixing this culture, because this culture ain't going to fix itself. TikTok's algorithms in North America are not designed to make us better people. Free Faster saw another dude in his car alone wearing a mask. Why? Yeah, that shit like blows my mind. When you're like, wearing a mask blows my mind in the first place, but I see it far too often. The few times I do drive, other people driving with their masks on, I'm just like, oh my God. I imagine they wear a condom 24/7 too. Free Faster. We are back at the off-grid cabin. Now come visit on your way. That's awesome. You guys are making friends and chatting. No masks required. Raz says, what you guys think will happen when recession comes. Listening to Peter Schiff, he says we'll have stagflation like in the 70s. Yeah, I lean towards stagflation as well, because of the different economic policies that we've got in place and where our economy's at in this moment of time. I also wouldn't be shocked to see hyperinflation. Uh, you know, back in the day, I was a big fan of the Daily Reckoning, which was like a newsletter written by Bill Bonner, if I remember correctly. And, he regularly talked about stagflation in the 1970s. He often talked about like turning Japanese, right? Which was just a reference to what happened to Japanese economy as the war economy, that like even in the post-war era, they essentially had like a war or a very centralized economy, despite the fact that we don't actually understand that in North America. I'm trying to think. There was a recent documentary I shared that you can watch for free on YouTube called like Prince of the Yen or Princes of the Yen. Fantastic documentary, and actually will kind of break down how Japan found themselves in this moment of stagflation and both the cause and effect of that. Really encourage you guys to check it out if you're so inclined. Yeah, stagflation. You'll hear that in a lot of libertarian Ron Paul circles these days, and I find it difficult to find a lot of points to argue with them. I definitely don't see deflation on the near horizon. Free Faster, they'll keep printing money and nobody will want to work. When they remove all the incentives, I think stagflation is likely. For context, on the masks, we're in Ontario, so it's optional now. Not sure why people still want to use face diapers. Agree with you. Some should keep masks on. Yeah, again, it's a nice filtering mechanism, if nothing else. Matt is right. The propaganda lovers identify themselves. Agree with it. And appreciate everyone jumping into the comment section. Oh, that's not the button I wanted. Neither is that. Where are my buttons? Appreciate everyone jumping into the comment section. Appreciate everyone that smashed the like button, everyone that shares this on social media, because we know big tech algorithms are going to do me, this channel, this show, no favors. But I appreciate the fact that you guys are seeking the truth, that you're actually trying to make your own informed decisions. And as always, don't let the maple pill be the end of your information gathering journey. Let this just be a jumping off point, right? So I've got links in the video description down below to all the stories I covered. That's not to say those are the only stories you should be paying attention to. There's a lot going on in this world. I'm just trying to highlight at least a lot of what's relevant to Canadians and trying to paint the big picture in the hopes that at least some of us can avoid the coming consequences of that volatility I was alluding to earlier. Anyways, that's enough of me rambling on here. Appreciate you guys. I know there's a lot of things competing for your time, energy, and attention. So the fact that you would spend it with me every weekday night means a lot to me. So I really do appreciate you guys. And we'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And yeah, keep your chin up there, because we are the remnant. We are the few. And regardless of what comes next in society, we actually need some builders. And so I think that's us. All right. Thanks, guys. I'll see you tomorrow.
Asking blue pill, red pill, corporate press, I've had my fill. I'm just a simple chap, believing in my own will. Rat fire, math evil, scheming, this is no drill. Haters masking boosted, but still with no chill. Need to come and take it if you wanna mess with my hill. We've been 3D printing, setting ready for that ghost